Good morning, everyone. Once again, this is Alexander D. Holloway with ISA 4220, and we're going to go over some AppArmor and HTTPS. AppArmor. AppArmor is a module that is on the Linux kernel that has a set files that are pre-programmed to allow an administrator to restrict certain other programs. It can allow or deny users access to the network, execute files. It can also write and read commands. It was developed by Chronicle back in 2009 and has been upgraded and included in the main Linux kernel systems. It provides a MAC or mandatory access control to the traditional DAC or discretionary access control. Some abilities it has is the AppArmor module is that it can also be set up to monitor when there are violations that it was unable to stop and they are logged into the system's logbook. This is the learning mode of AppArmor. AppArmor is put on the kernel via an LSM or Linux security module. Some details. AppArmor is mainly used compared to SEL Linux because it is easier to set up and maintain. SE Linux is for some administrators very difficult to work with because it uses a file labeling system, whereas AppArmor uses file system paths. For example, AppArmor is easier to modify to previous or existing systems, whereas SE Linux only works on systems that support security labels. To go into some more detail, SE Linux uses these things called inode numbers to label files. Inodes are part of the Unix style file systems known as a data structure. It lets the system know if something is a file or a directory. These store certain data like permissions, file attributes, and times of change or modifications. AppArmor can create hardlines to access inaccessible files, unlike SE Linux, which even if you created hardlines, because the data is labeled in an inaccessible inode, it will still be inaccessible. Some hardening. Like most recommendations, which tells you to disable all services that you do not need and make sure any updates are applied within a reasonable amount of time. The best recommendation is make sure your computer has an accurately crafted configuration to see optimal protection. AppArmor is an application that monitors what applications access what files and also helps control root privileges. Some hardening process happens during installations, such as enabling encrypted LVM. This is good for hardening your system and data. This helps protect your data if it is successfully stolen, because the attacker can only gain access to the data if they have related key or passcode. If not, they cannot decrypt the data. Another hardening technique after installation is adding on a configure PAM. This is a pluggable application module that lets your system have more authentication steps, which helps in adding a more fine-tuned configuration. These are just some of the hardening steps that can be taken to harden AppArmor. HTTPS. HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. This is used on top of HTTP, which is the same thing, but HTTPS has the secure extension. This means that when on a computer network, this helps protect you by securing any communication over your computer. This is a protocol of communication that is encrypted via the transport layer security, aka the TLS. This was originally called SSL, or Secure on the Web. It was, or Secure Socket Layer, HTTPS was at first used for security when authorizing transitions online through purchases on the web. It was also used for sensitive transactions between companies and email communication. HTTPS is now widely used by all to help protect users' privacy, communication, identity, and personal accounts. Some abilities. Some features of HTTPS are that it is designed to protect you and your system by authentication of the website and protecting the integrity and privacy of any information exchanged between your system and the website while the data is being transported between them. This is mainly to keep the data safe from attacks that happen while data is in transit from a man-in-the-middle type attacks. A man-in-the-middle attack happens when attacker secretly gets a hold of your information and either alters or relays it to somebody else. HTTPS helps prevent this by using an authentication factor in which it has mutual authentication in which it authenticates users at both endpoints, so from your computer and the website, helping to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks. Details. Even though HTTPS uses the URI schemes or Uniform Resource Identifier and uses identical syntax, but when it contacts a website and tells the browser to use extra encryption layer of SSL/TLS to help protect the data that is being transferred. In this sense, HTTP and HTTPS are essentially the same, but it jumps on the essentially the same, but it jumps on the TLS so that it can help encrypt HTTP, which is an underlying layer of HTTPS entirely, making it more secure. This includes everything from query parameters, certain web pages, headers, and cookies that are used, which stores the user's personal information. Many web browsers and applications trust HTTPS because many of them come pre-designed with certificate authorities that help to verify valid certificates, which means it's a trusted HTTPS connection. Hardening. Some hardening techniques of the TLS SSL layer uses more cipher suites, which combine message authentication codes, encryptions, and authentications. There are many misconfigured TLS configurations that can cause vulnerabilities, which can leave old suites still running that can be an easy target for attackers. The first thing you want to do is disable old suites such as SSL 2.0 and the one that came before it, SSL 3.0. Before, these versions had many security issues, and disabling them will help get rid of these vulnerabilities. Then you need to disable TLS 1.0 and 1.1 because the payment card industry standard has officially did away with being able to use those and will no longer use them. Some other ciphers that can be disabled are RC4 and DES. These are older suites that does not need to be used. Some cipher suite strings that are pretty strong can be found at the below website www.acunix.com, and it has a list of string suites that provide strong encryption to modern browsers and other TLS/SSL clients. Thank you for watching. And here are my references.